bring to you on this particular episode, on this particular platform, is real, raw, and relevant information, uncut, undisputed information that we give to you straight from the streets and even from the executive suites. You know, it's me, your host, Willie J. You already know, man. I'm so nice to name me twice. I'm grateful to even be back in space, to be honest with you. Like we took maybe a few weeks off, you know, because I was out of town. Young O, my producer, he was out of town. You know, there's been a whole lot going on and everybody is just, you know, trying to get things accomplished. And so we definitely need a little bit of a break. I hope you guys enjoyed the break as well. But like usual, we're gonna be bringing you guys real, raw, and relevant information. And but no further ado, man, we have, man, always, you know, prestigious, wonderful, remarkable guests that we have in a particular space right here on this platform. We have to my left of me right here, my brother Deionte Petty, you know, AKA Petty Pro. You know what I'm saying? And this is a beautiful brother, man. You know, I've been knowing you for quite some time, doing work with you in space and community. You know, at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, you know, we all over, man, all over the, you know, from the CD to the South End to the West Seattle with the Credible Messenger Initiative, doing a lot of stuff, man. And I know you're one of those individuals who keep your hand on the pulse of the city of Seattle. So you're one of those individuals who understands what's going on with our young folks out here, some of the things that they're up against on a daily basis, you know. And for a long time, you know, you was one of those individuals who considered yourself that in that what they were considered an at-risk youth population, right? But we don't look at it as at risk. We look at it as at promise, you know, at opportunity, because giving them the opportunities to have resources, the right relevant services, they can propel their lives in a much different direction. And so, with no further ado, man, Mr. Deionte Petty, kind of, you know, let the people know who you are, what you do, and we can get into the subject matter of what's going on with young folks in the city of Seattle. And it's a reverberation across this nation in Black and brown communities and the uptick of gun violence and things of that nature. I definitely want to have that heavy dialogue with you, but just give the viewing audience a little bit of who you are.
Well, first and foremost, man, thank you for having me. And I think it's kind of ironic because I get a lot of good game from you. You know what I mean? He definitely one of the few people who I acknowledge as my big bro. And so hopefully I give the audience some good game that, you know, reciprocating what I got from you and some other brothers and whatnot. But my name's Deionte Petty. I coach high school basketball. I serve as a director at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. I'm also an entrepreneur. And I'm actively engaged in my community in any and every capacity that I can be. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Yeah, that's a little bit, but I know you carry and hold many different positions and hats.
For sure.
And also, there's a lot that's going on in the city of Seattle. There's this uptick of gun violence amongst young folks, you know, all across the city. We are seeing it. You know, just a few weeks ago, we witnessed, you know, 4 Black men succumb to I refer to it as a preventable cause of death. Like you don't have to die by a bullet, right? Those are measures that if we had certain circumstances in place, those are measures of accounts to which we can prevent, right? And so, but there's also this underlying component that is there, but only a few of us recognize it, and only a few of us speak and talk about that, and that's the uptick of gun violence even in the African community. And what I mean by African community, we all are, you know, African, we are descendants of Africa, but as far as our sisters and brothers who actually come, are their mothers and their fathers come from the continent, come from the motherland, and then they come here to the North Shores of America. Then they start to pick up on some of the ideals, some of the subcultural group practices, start to develop those characteristics and identify with those things. And then next thing you know, by the next generation, some of these young folks has picked up some of the same street nonsense or ideology. And because of that, there's been a uptick in gun violence, you know, in the African community, just, you know, and also in juxtaposition, and also I would say there's been beef even with the African and the black community.
And some of it has become internal amongst themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little more on that?
I mean, it's a little sensitive because there's a lot of stuff that's still popping off right now. But it's very sad. I mean, a lot of the youth from that community I've been working with since before they were ever involved in any type of gang activity. And so it's very sensitive and very sad. And it's something that I'm still trying to understand myself. I mean, I learned Islam. I learned about Islam through that particular community, right? And it seems like they've also appropriated some negative aspects of our culture, like like gang culture and whatnot. And some of it has to do with survival, because they came into certain environments that were already. I don't think it was a coincidence that they were placed into project housing and weren't too far removed from what was already going on in our communities, right? And so a lot of it just, I feel like, naturally aspired from survival of the fittest. You grow up in a certain environment, you have to know how to protect yourself and whatnot. But then there also are some aspects of them, of our brothers from, our brothers from Africa appropriating gang culture, and drug culture as well and whatnot. And unfortunately, some of those ideologies have truly infected our youth. So it's a lot going on right now, and I'm trying to sit down with a lot of the young people and figure out what they believe the solutions are. Because it's always, it always has been historically the older generation kind of going back and judging the youth and saying that they're crazy or not understanding what they're going through. But I want to come from a place where I'm letting them control the narrative. Like, we have the resources. What can we plug you into that will help you change the narrative of what's going on with your generation? And the feedback has been good, but there's a lot of work to do. Yeah,
there is a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And in doing that work, what I don't want to do is create a misnomer by maybe a possible misidentification, because
Right.
I don't want the viewing audience to think that you speak for the African community.
Yeah.
I don't want them to think that you come from the continent, or your mother or your father, you're a generation or so from the continent.
Yeah.
You are a Black American, but you made it clear that.
But I do adopt the ideology that we all come from Mother Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We might be a little far removed, and we're hybrid in the sense that we created our own culture. And if you ask me, Black people are the most influential people on the planet.
Yeah.
And some aspects of our culture are negative, and other people have appropriated it. Mm-hmm. But I definitely do not speak for the Somali community or Ethiopian or Roma community. I'm very connected. However, there are still some barriers as far as culture and language and whatnot. And while I do understand a lot, I do not understand everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I just wanted to kind of emphasize and hit on, was that you're connected.
Yeah.
And that's kind of give you the position to be able to speak on certain things because of that connection, right?
For sure.
And then I also want to speak on this notion of cultural appropriation. I know that we speak on these things when we feel as though and recognize and pinpoint when white culture does it,
right,
to Black culture when it comes to the music, right, when it comes to the dress code, when it comes to the dancing. And then what I'm also hearing is that, because I don't want, I do a little bit, I do want to be a little bit combative. I have to be,
sure,
I have to be realistic in that regard, right? Because this is a platform, we keep it raw, we keep it real, we 100%. Have the content relevant, and we do give good game, right? That doesn't mean that what I say is the gospel, so to speak, right? Or anyone else. But when I hear that there's some aspects of our culture that they've either picked up, meaning our brothers and sisters who are more closely connected to the continent, mm-hmm, or that some aspects of our cultural expressions are negative, I have a different kind of ideology around that. I think that what happened to us is no different than what's taking place with our sisters and brothers who come from Africa, and what it really is grounded up into white supremacy, right? Is
like the Willie Lynch syndrome.
Absolutely, it's white supremacy.
And
what I'm saying is this: it's not even just a divide and conquer piece.
Right.
It's we have this notion for some of us around white supremacy. We think that white supremacy looks like, you know, racial epithets, right? Racial, discrimination, preventing you from going into certain places or receiving certain services medically or whatever. But I think also white supremacy shows up in the idea of gang culture. Right? Because it's very subversive. It's very to the point where it creates, you know, inward hostility amongst oneself, and because that's not who we truly are in our root to who our identities are. What I'm saying is white supremacy is an organism that knows how to ship and shape different aspects and 100%. Shows up in many different regards. So when we talk about our culture, what I don't want to, for me, I know you may not be saying this, but saying like being a Crip, being a Blood, being a GD, being a Vice Lord, or wherever else may have you, like you said, these are survival tools that we picked up here, and we didn't bring them here, and that's not our culture. And what I'm saying is for the African sisters and brothers, if that's what they prefer to call themselves, the Somalis, you know, the Eritreans, the Habashas, the Oromos, what they're experiencing is the same thing that happened to us, is that it's not black folks who identify these things, it's really white supremacy. 100%. But as you stated, they're utilizing the biggest influence that we have, which is us. You know what I'm saying? And so it's almost like taking chitlins, you know, the guts and the bowels of a pig and turn it into a delicacy, right? During slavery, black folks had to do that. So it's something we should not be eating, but for the sake of survival, we was able to make a delicacy out of it. So it's the same thing. We shouldn't be consuming gang culture, but for the sake of survival, we have put a certain twist and touch to it to where it does have a certain appeal.
I mean, when you even look at the history of gang culture, and just like, I feel like gang culture in its essence is Afrocentric, because one of the most famous African proverbs is it takes a village to raise a child, right? And before, gangs were known for violence and whatnot. They were doing programs and providing resources and doing stuff in the community, right? And eventually it led to some other stuff like, which were implanted. There's actual documentation of, you know, the FBI and whatnot implanting guns and drugs. But prior to that, there was programming and whatnot. And I feel like the original essence of what gangs were founded from is, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. And I mean, you're from the original Central District, and so you witnessed certain things that I didn't even get to witness from my generation on what that looks like. But obviously that has steered into something different. And so while I think gang culture in its essence is not negative, some of the stuff that stems from that is negative. So let me correct myself if I, you know.
No, you're good. You're good. I just want to make sure that there's a different narrative around what you said is shared, because I know you and I know where you're coming from, right? But I also know that there's viewers who may take that and think a different aspect, right? And think that gang culture is an identifiable characteristic tied to black people, right? And the reality is, it's tied to white supremacy. Let's just be honest, right? And when we talk about gang culture, for somebody who comes from that subcultural group, myself, who is a practitioner of that particular essence at one particular time and on the front lines and pushed hard, I'm one of those individuals who don't identify with that idea no more. What I identify more with is a power group. Right? We don't identify with the notion of gangs, because gang is a Eurocentric concept and it's steeped in things that is already riddled with negativity, right? What we look at is the power group concept, and that's a little more to that when we talk about giving good game. And I want to get more back to because we're talking about young folks and how they're wrapped up into these particular aspects. But power group means we take the positives of what they do, and we put it on steroids. We emphasize it in such a manner where we educate them and say, you guys, you and Lil Pookie can be on the phone and you can call them and be like, man, hey, what you doing? Like, man, I ain't doing nothing, bro. I'm about to just hit the hood. Oh, man, I'm about to hit the hood too. Who's gonna be on, man? I don't even know. I'm about to just show up. Next thing you know, you got 20 individuals standing in the parking lot on 23rd on Jackson with no agenda, with nothing to do, but they got everybody beat in the regard that they can come together. Because majority of the people that you and I are around, when we're in meetings, there's a paycheck attached to the position of why they're in the room. So I tell the young folks, you already got the people a lot of times in those rooms beaten because they can't call each other on the weekend and say, hey, what are you doing, Bob? Oh, I ain't doing nothing. I'm about to go down to Alki. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go down there too. No, they don't even come together. So you already got them beat in the spirit of collaboration. Right? And then when we're talking about power group, now how can we take that and place an agenda that propels what you really want to the forefront? How can we take some of the young folks in terms of the leadership and build them up so they can become the political representatives of these regions, of the districts, of these particular areas that they come from? So now when we start to bang, we can actually bang in a way that say, I'm about to build up the Central District. We about to build up the parks in the Central District. We about to have affordable housing for families, black and brown families in the Central District. Now we're banging against the South End so those brothers and sisters can raise up in the same manner and they can become representatives in their district and they can start banging and say, now who got the best park? Who got the best quality services that are being provided to the community? So when we talk about taking them from the gang mentality to a power group mentality, we're actually talking about informing them in how they show up so they can have the most aspects in that regard. But I do want to get back to talking about the elements of what's currently going on in the streets. Like, it's not just taking place in Seattle. Right, we can see it's a reverberation across this nation. The uptick of gun violence. We can highlight what goes on in Chicago. We can highlight what's going on in DC, New York, Milwaukee. Detroit. What do you think? What do you think needs? Not only what do you think about what's going on, what do you think needs to be present that may not be present or may need to be placed on steroids if there's only a little bit of it, how it needs to be blown up so that service or that resource can be more relevant for young folks in the streets today?
I think it needs to be information, examples, and resources, opportunity. I think that, it's been generations of misinformation and a couple bad habits and whatnot, but now with the access to the internet and the access to role models all across and people like yourselves who come from a particular lifestyle and is now controlling a new narrative and have the potential to be super influential all across the globe, I feel like that's what's lacking and that's what's needed. I tell the youth that all the time, like, you guys are the future. So I'm tapped into you guys and I'm gonna do whatever I can because my daughter's gonna grow up under you guys.
Yeah, man, Mr. Petty.
Come on.
Petty Pro, man. I definitely was, listening to what you were saying in terms of what is more so needed around the different support services, that the young folks need in society. Is there anything else that you feel like that is necessary, that is needed, that's a requirement in order to help bring some of our young folks and folks in our community out of some of the trenches that we find ourselves in?
I think we need some good examples, some access to opportunities and resources. And for example, you come from a particular lifestyle and now you're pushing this new narrative, right? And I feel like everybody across the globe needs to hear that. There's a lot of people who can benefit from that message because there's so many bad examples out there, right? And then access to opportunities to build up the community and powernomics. You can only make so much change. Like, we have the most influence in the world. However, sometimes we don't have the most access to capital. And so that's how we're able to get pushed back from our communities and gentrified. And so, now we're getting more spread out amongst the county instead of being in the city where we are historically raised and trying to build up the communities that we come from. And so definitely,
Go ahead.
we might as well start over now.
Oh yeah, we told everybody to kill their phones.
Are you recording?
Yes, we're recording. Can you please turn your phone off?
My phone was off before I even had it.
Yeah, the disrespect you walk in with, please. Please do not start. Security. Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah.
Keep
Come
going,
on,
bro.
come on.
Cause he's gonna edit this anyway. So I know, man. Look, man, you ain't going back to college anyway.
Ooh. YouTube University.
You go to school now. But so Mr. Petty, I think that the things you have raised up are very accurate. You know, we need those support services. We need the resources. We need the like you talked about, John. You know, Claude Anderson when he got a book, Powernomics.
Yes.
All these different aspects. Where it's definitely needed and necessary. But I also think what is critical in that in that development or that component is relationship.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Because relationship for me, we are relational, right? That's one of my mentors, and you got the chance to meet one of my mentors, right? And I'm talking about Dr. Edwin Nichols. Yes. We went down to DC and had the chance to be in
his house and everything.
His historic home. It's pretty much we went to the National African American Museum, right?
Yeah.
And we left there and was like, we could have literally skipped, you know, going there and went to his home. Because like you said, not only all the degrees on his wall, not only all the African artifact that he possesses in his home, but I've never seen in any person's home such an expensive library. Yeah. I've never seen, you know, and he was like, wow, you'll be amazed at the reference books that I have down in the basement, right? And we was in his library at the top of his home, and so
dedicated the whole floor to
absolutely. And it was for me, it was a paradise on earth because I love to be, you know, in a library. That's one of my favorite places to be because literally, like, the world is. I'm literally surrounded by anything and everything, you know, when it comes to connection to the world and how people think. So for me, relationship is very critical because Dr. Edwin Nichols talks about in our culture, the highest value is the relationship, right? It's the relationship. But he also talks about in the European culture, the highest value is the object. Yes. And a lot of what we do and how we've been socialized and been exposed is been through a Eurocentric perspective, right? Thanks. Even in playing sports. You mentioned something about being a basketball coach. Yeah. Right? Even in playing sports. How do you win a championship?
The team.
Right there. Right. Bingo. There. Yeah. Right? You win a championship together. It takes a team.
From the players on the bench to the players on the court.
But even when you win the championship, there's this one identifier at the end of winning the championship, and what is that?
The trophy.
Not just the trophy, which is the object, but there's also the MVP.
Yes.
Right? And because even the sports we play is based upon a Eurocentric concept that is not about the group membership, even though it took the team to be able to win the championship, the object is the trophy, but we still have to have the MVP, right? As Dr. Edwin Nichols lets us know. But with us, when it comes down to relationship, the highest value is not the object, right? So if you do something to me or if I do something to you, there's almost not enough. And it's egregious enough to where you be like, I'm done talking to that brother. Yeah. There's not even enough amount of money that could put you and I back in the same room. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's not about the object. So I think that even with our young folks, we need to develop relationship 100%. In a way that gives them an opportunity to see value in these other different, you know, aspects of life that you're talking about, the resources, the services, the economics. It comes down to having a relationship. And that creates the value. When I go into the schools and I speak to the young folks, I don't care if I'm in an elementary school, if I'm in a middle school, or if I'm in a high school. When I ask them by a show of hands, how many young folks in here know an attorney? Do they know a banker? Do they know a senator, a politician, a doctor on a personal level? I'm not talking about because you have an appointment, you've been going to go see this doctor for quite some time, and now you kind of befriended this doctor. I'm talking about you have unadulterated access to this particular kind of person. There's not too many hands that go up when I ask that question. Most of these young folks in the schools that I speak at, they don't have an attorney that's a cousin, that's an uncle, or a senator, or a politician that they have an unadulterated access to, and they can build relationship with, and they can have an opportunity to go into these different spaces. Right. But when I ask them, by a show of hands, how many people here know someone who's incarcerated, who's been incarcerated in your family, in your community, or somebody who is gang related in your family or a friend? Majority of the hands go up. And you know what that tells me? They have more of an opportunity to go into that particular space because they have more relationships that creates a pathway that goes into those particular spaces. So when you talk about these resources and these services, we also have to have identifiable and concrete relationships built around that, because if not, because of who we are, we go where the relationship is at. And another example, and I'm gonna let you speak, is this. Most young folks want to do what you do when they start to get engaged with you.
That's a fact.
Right?
Yeah.
They want to do what you do. It's because of the relationship. They didn't know it was an option at first because they even though it's been out here, but because of the way you've engaged them and the way you built rapport and relationship with them, they now see it as an option. So now that becomes a real relevant resource, a real relevant service, other than just plastering it up on the wall, on a flyer or on some website as an opportunity to put your name in to try to become that thing. If you don't have a relationship connecting you to that process, it's a very difficult thing. So I just want to emphasize for our community, for the kind of people we are, relationship is the highest value. And we just don't want to get too caught up on the object of the resource or the service, because those things will fall out of if we don't have a relationship connecting us to that.
What would you say is the greatest resource?
The greatest resource is human potential.
I was gonna say people.
Yeah, people.
You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? So when I say resources, I don't just mean things of monetary value or of monetary gain. I mean people. You know what I mean? So the best resource is ourselves. And the one thing I was taught from you is it takes a spider to fix a spider's web. And so like when I search for resources, I don't search outside of my community. I search from within. And I think that's the approach that I have. And I'm not saying that my approach is right, but that's the approach I choose to adopt, because when I see all these young people in my community, I see value, I see potential. And it takes people like us to see that in them sometimes, because they might not see them in themselves, because like you said, they have relationships with people in other spaces that they're more tied or more vulnerable to being in those particular spaces, right? But when we see their greatness, and sometimes like you might just see somebody, he has a very, very eloquent speech, or somebody who's very athletic or is very good at entertaining or whatever it is, we might be able to kind of give them some type of direction and let them know, okay, we can build you up, or we can go outside and figure out other resources to help you build up yourselves as a resource. So now that you have done that, what can you do? You can go back and give it back to the community. And I feel like, when it comes to our communities, we are our greatest resource, and we have to see value in that. And I think that comes first and foremost before you talk about anything else. Before money, before opportunities, before anything else. If we don't see value in each other, you know what else you tell me?
What's that?
Man, and I've known this, but I heard you say it at one of the last rallies, but for 500 years we've been taught to hate ourselves. You know what I mean? So you don't see value in yourself 9 times out of 10. And then from your ops is telling you to hate yourself. Your teachers, the curriculum at school is teaching you to hate yourself. And you're not gonna go pick up a book because you don't know what book to pick up. You know what I mean? And so it takes us sometimes to let them know, like, you got a lot to contribute to this planet, to your community, to the city, more so than the mayor. Because the mayor is not cut. When these shootings happen, the mayor don't show up. I mean, I'm not gonna blast her name, but she don't show up to she show up to the aftermath, or she'll show up to a rally when it's time to get support, when she need voters. And that's why with Dr. Edwin Nichols, I'll never forget this time. I know you remember what he said. What do we have to do to our youth? He said, politicize our youth.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
You know what I mean?
We built something out of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Politicizing the youth campaign. You're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. And I appreciate that. And that's part of the reason why having you on this platform is very important, not only for me but for the viewers, because you're one of those young folks that's been in space that I see you're a sponge and you pick it up but you also apply, right?
Yeah,
And unafraid to do it. Because there's people who think that in order to apply something, you got to be perfect, right? And nobody's going to be perfect the first several times they may apply something that may be of real importance and real value, right? One of my, I guess you could say one of my favorite motivational, inspirational speakers. And the reason why I say this is because he helped me get through some times that were difficult for me.
Yeah.
Les Brown, you know, when I came across him at a time when I was about, I think I was like 19, maybe, you know, when I was at Walla Walla, Washington State Penitentiary, and I came across his book, you know, two of them, his books is How to Live Your Dream, and I forget the other one at this particular moment, it slips my mind. It Ain't Over Until You Win. Mm-hmm. And then he also has some back then we was listening to cassette tapes. Yeah. So I was listening to his cassette tape, and he was talking about you don't have to be great in order to get started, but you got to get started in order to become great. Right. And he's talked about Michael Jordan not being great when he first got started. He actually was cut from the basketball team, right? And he didn't make it, you know? And so the reality is, that's what I like about you, and I want the other young folks who are relatively close in approximation to your age group to hear that there's much value being around other folks who may be your senior in certain categories, and you're open and willing to grow from that, right? Because there's categories in your life and in my life where you're the senior and I'm the junior. Mm-hmm. So you in that instance, you become my teacher. I become your student, right? And there's exchangeable roles, and I wanted this to kind of play out in front of folks because I see you as my young bro, but I also see you as my peer, right? I love you, and anything that I can do to support you, you already know that I'm there, man. So, right. Petty Pro, man, I appreciate you. Yeah. I definitely want you to let the viewing audience know how to get in contact with you to support some of the work that you're doing. You're all over the community. Mm-hmm. So like I said, we can't even identify just one or two or three things that you do, but just being out here and just pretty much putting a life jacket on and trying to save lives, man, is, you know, you're preserving lives. That's pretty much what you come out here to do, and you connect with folks in a real relevant way on every aspect. That's what
the Quran says, man. You saving one life is like saving all of mankind.
Man, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
That's real. Know? That's real because it reverberates, right? Because that life that you save that could potentially take out another life, it takes away that ripple effect and creates a different kind of ripple effect. Yeah. So, you know, that's definitely real. So how can people get in contact with you? What is your social, you know, your handle, your social media handle, and things of that nature? Social media, just Petty Pro. I don't really be on Snapchat or anything like that. I don't use Facebook, but Twitter and Instagram, Petty Pro. If you all want to find me and tap in with me, that's where you can find me at. All right, thank you, brother, man. We appreciate you for coming here, giving us some real relevant raw content on GGA. That's the wonderful episode with my brother. We definitely gonna bring some more information. We're gonna have you on the show again. I appreciate you and much love, man. For sure. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
There's a lot going on. Are you ready? Ready to feel better, look better, be better? Drink water. Be ready for a pickup game. Insta-frame to work hard towards your aim. Drink water. Hydrate. Hydrate to invest in yourself. Cut down on sugar. Invest in your health. Imagine the possibilities and reach your potential. Who knows what's next? Be ready. Be hydrated.
Do you want to represent your city? Now you can. The City of Seattle's Democracy Voucher Program is now open. Candidates interested in using democracy vouchers to help finance their campaign for 2021 may begin qualifying now. In 2021, the mayor, city attorney, and the 2 city council at-large positions will be on the ballot. The Democracy Voucher Program has $6.8 million available for local candidates to fund their campaigns. Running a competitive campaign can be costly, and access to funding can serve as a barrier to entry for potential candidates. The Seattle Ethics and Elections Commission is offering one-on-one trainings for potential candidates who want to explore how to access the Democracy Vouchers. Interested candidates can contact the Democracy Voucher Program at 206-727-8855 or email democracyvoucher@seattle.gov. For more information, you can also visit seattle.gov/democracyvoucher.
Welcome back to another episode of GGA, Good Game Alert. It's your host, Willie J. We just got done talking to Petty Pro, Deionte Petty, a little bit about what's going on in the streets with the young folks, and then talk about some different solutions. I know you guys heard me speak a little more than I do with most guests, but that's my young bro. I wanted to vibe. I want you guys to feel the energy. You know how it goes back and forth. But I'm pausing a little bit because a few weeks back, we had a very, heavy episode in regards to speaking around a very sensitive situation regarding Malik Williams. If you guys are not, mindful or remember the circumstances around Malik Williams, he was the young man that was executed by the Federal Police Department while he was sitting in the back seat of a car, and he was told to get out, but he was paraplegic and had been so for 10 years, and the police shot at him 86 times, and they said the reason why is because they said he had a gun. Come to find out he did not have a gun, and that the earlier reports were saying he shot 2 police officers. Come to find out they were so eager, in my opinion, to assassinate this young black man that they end up really got into a shootout amongst themselves. They were on different opposite sides when 86 rounds were fired, and 2 officers they pretty much shot themselves. So we have here today with us Marvin Walker, who is the father of Malik Williams. He didn't have the opportunity to be here a few weeks ago because he was working, but we wanted to make sure that we created space for you to be able to speak a little more around this particular subject. Just give us a little bit on, what's been going on in the case with Malik. Also with, what more the public should be doing in terms of just trying to wake up, the level of consciousness around the situation. Like, give us a little insight on what's going on with that.
Well, I think that may God bless the dead George Floyd, we know how long this has been going on. It's been going on for far too long, as far as when we were younger and we first stepped up off the porch in our encounters with law enforcement. It just stems from individuals that are foreigners coming into our community and been given badges and a license to kill. As far as the case and everything goes, first of all, let me touch on something. Because when it had went down and the first time that I seen it, it's like the media is, first they go ahead and it's the character assassination. They want to defile and denigrate you and slander your name. And then, but they're going off, the news reporters and everything are going off, what law enforcement is putting out there for us to listen to it and to process it in our minds that it's justified, Let me get into the story a little bit deeper. I've come to find out that, first of all, they were sitting in the car, and as they were sitting in the car, the lady became, irate, loud, and belligerent, but it wasn't because of my son. It was because she had just broke up with her boyfriend. And so she was in the car on the phone with him, you know, going off, you know. They're both going back and forth. Malik was just sitting in the car. An eyewitness seen the car moving a little bit, heard a little bit of noise, and so he decided to call the police because he thought it was a domestic disturbance. The dispute and everything wasn't with my son. I've come to find out. They just rolled up on the scene. Now, mind you, the lady that my son was with, she had a DUI. They didn't even, you know, they overlooked that. You know, they seen white woman, black male, you know, they was figuring that the domestic, so in their mind, they're coming to address the situation, thinking that they had a woman that was in distress, and that wasn't the case. Now, I don't care what a person, you know, it's a heated situation, you know. You're going back and forth with the officers and everything like that because you know that you've done nothing wrong, and you're trying to establish that with them. You know, I'm not doing nothing wrong. I'm just sitting here. You know what I'm saying? Officer, what's the problem? But they just automatically came there and they just focused on him. You know, and the door was wide open. The video cameras from the elderly home was right there in the door. You know, I mean, right, it was just zoomed right there. It was perfect. The door was wide open. The officer approached him, you know, and you could see both of his hands moving. He's explaining, you know, he's trying to let them know what the situation was. It's not with me. I don't know what's going on. But it just seemed like they just started to just, you know, just focus on him and harass him. And they didn't even have time to even ask the woman for her ID. They just instantly just started shooting in a split second. 84, that's 90 shots. That's putting the community at risk of injury, you know, and they also, but before that time that they were going back and forth to the car talking to him, a lot of the people in the senior living were right there and they were looking out their windows. They threatened to arrest these elderly people if they didn't go back into their quarters or their rooms. But most of them had refused. And so they started shooting, and they were trying to paint a false narrative that my son had a gun and he was shooting at them, and that wasn't true at all. That wasn't true at all, you know. I watched the video, you know, that's what really got me, is when I seen how quick, how fast it happened, and how obvious it was that he wasn't reaching for anything. I had got with my attorney, allowed him to look at the video, and so when he looked at the video, he already knew something was wrong. He just kept shaking his head. Well, we sent the video to be enhanced, and you could see his hands plain as day. They were saying down at the Des Moines police department, because they were doing the investigation, that it would pixelate. Nah, technology's too good. They zoomed it in the car, in his lap. You could see it plain as day. He never made a move, a gesture, because remember when you was explaining it, they were like, oh yeah, he had a gun and this and that, you know, a lot of BS. But then they try to clean it up. Oh, he made a move. I made a move. What was I reaching for? Do you have any type of evidence, There's no justification for that. And then the lies and the propaganda of how they tried to cover it up by way of the media. You know, it was just a complete character assassination. As black men, they feel, they go ahead and they kill us and they just think that nobody cares. Oh well. Another life gone, another gone. And so it just needs to be something that we cannot let it die down. We still have to go after them full force because it's not gonna stop. The things that's happened up out here in Capitol Hill, they created that. They created these situations in different cities, in Portland and in LA, and it just reverberated all around the United States, all the way around the world for that fact. But they created that, because they've been doing it for so long, and everybody's been putting in, there have been situations where people have put in complaints about certain officers, and they still let them do their thing. Because nothing was ever caught on camera or caught on tape, but we got hip to that now. We got to record all situations, because I feel it's not gonna stop. But the thing is that this needs to get up out there, I feel. Get up out there full blown. Come on now, 86 shots? Are you serious?
And he was paraplegic.
And he was a paraplegic.
For 10 years prior to this.
Yes. And you could tell when the car door was open, he's explaining himself. He's explaining, I can't walk, my wheelchair's in the back and I can't get out the car. But they didn't care.
Yeah, this is heavy. And for me, I just want to know, what do you feel more people can do as far as the public to corral around this atrocity, to support and raise up, the awareness, the support around this effort? What do you feel like because like you said, the situation happened with George Floyd was messed up. The world was able to see that. This situation happened months prior to George Floyd when everybody wasn't on the pandemic and confined to their homes and didn't have nothing to do the next day if they were to see it on the news, like, in the case of Fidel Castro and other folks, right? Mm-hmm. They seen it, but they had other stuff to do to kind of distract them. This pandemic put everybody in a stationary, position, whereas they didn't have nothing to do but to have this image burnt inside their head, and it was like, this is wrong. And then they had all this piled up energy from sitting on it for so long. This happened before George Floyd. How do we bring this to the attention of the public that this paraplegic young man, because he was only 24, it didn't matter if he was 84, it was wrong. Right. But he was 24 with so much possibility, so much potential, so much more life to offer this world, and for him to be killed and assassinated in the way that he had been, what do we need to do more as far as a public to bring more relevance around this issue, bring more support around this issue, and more support to the family?
Well, what I feel should happen is that, they need to be pressed. All the mayors, the mayor from Federal Way, from Seattle, we have to press them. They're not gonna move unless we make them move. We seen that. And so and then we have to come together on the united front. As far as this goes, everybody went crazy behind different situations, But this has been going on in our own city. We have to protect ours. We have to protect our loved ones. We have to protect our kids, our uncles, or whoever has failed to police brutality. We have to bring their names up and stand up and fight for them and fight for justice. Because they're no longer here to fight for themselves. So what I wanted to do is to put together a rally, you know, in my son's name, and to just keep it going. That's all we can do. Until they start waking up, people in positions of power start listening.
Do you have the list of the name of the officers that was involved in the shooting?
I haven't got them yet.
Okay.
I haven't got the names or anything yet, but that's coming.
Okay.
Because they're trying to not give divulge that information and give up the police report. And it's crazy that we have to fight for that. For
So
this
you don't have the
long.
name of the officers. You don't have a police report. Do you have a medical examiner report?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the medical examiner's report. I have the full autopsy report
Okay.
of what it went down. And yeah,
And you seen the video. Were you able to keep or have a possession of a copy of the video? And maybe not yourself personally, but your legal defense, or do they have
oh,
possession?
that's on the way. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna have personal video and
Okay.
everything. And the one thing about it is that, they just made it seem like it was such a heroic act, but it was just cowardice. And then for them to, I'm looking at the autopsy report, bro, and 4 shots to the back through the car seat. You guys were all just shooting through the back. 3 to the back of the head. 4 at his back.
Wow.
And they want to walk around and just think that it's just going to be swept up under the rug and they could just go home to their families, their kids, and their loved ones. No, I'm on them. Believe that.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm not
we
gonna
need
stop.
we need to definitely push this issue in terms of the support, bringing about more awareness around this issue, bringing, like you said, we get some rallies going, but we definitely need some answers.
Right.
We need some answers, like you said, from the federal way mayor to the police department, and you said there's an independent investigation taking place. The Deionte Police Department is supposed to be investigating this.
No, they had Des Moines.
Des Moines?
Yeah, because
Okay.
now they can no longer do their own internal investigation. It has to be with another department.
And how has that investigation been going so far?
Well, after we watched the tape and everything like that, I was able to speak to a couple officers, and they were upset. They weren't sitting there. They wasn't trying to cover it up. They just pretty much just told me what it was. They was like, yeah, it's some foul play going on with this. This is something that needs to be looked at. This is something that needs to be pursued. I never bid on, oh, he had a gun or anything. No, I never bid on that, bro. It was plain as day. What it went down, and you're my bro.
Absolutely.
We gonna sit down and so you can see for yourself. I'm gonna allow you, as my family, as my brother, to watch this, to see what you see, to get your perspective.
Absolutely, and it's needed, right? Because I'm definitely one of those individuals that's advocating for more support around this issue, right?
Right.
And it needs to take place. Malik should not have died in this manner at all, you know? And just like any one of us who would have done a similar thing, and I'm sure to a much lesser degree, because most situations don't require 80 plus, bullets, but we all would have been brought to the court of, justice, or to the court of law, however people want to, describe that particular entity, but we would have been held accountable.
Right.
And people are walking away, as you stated, from this assassination that I would like to refer it as. It was an assassination.
Absolutely.
They was able to walk away from that and go home that day and still go home repetitively afterwards. And like you said, be amongst their family. And not to say we want anyone to be taken away from the family through incarceration or anything, but justice needs to be served.
Right.
Justice needs to be served, and there has been no justice up until this point. So we want the folks who are viewing this to step up and raise the banner of Malik Williams, right?
Absolutely.
Because when you raise the banner of Malik Williams, you are raising the banner simultaneously of saying that you do not agree with this and you believe in the humanity of all folks. When you raise that banner, you're saying that we don't want this to happen because folks got to understand this. It's us today. Black and brown folks, it's us today. But at some critical point, if this thing continues to take place in the rapid race that it's been going, it's gonna be someone else tomorrow.
Right.
And it's gonna be them, those same people. So when we talk about just being on the sharp edge of injustice, we feel it. You know, the poking, the stabbing, the thrust of the movement of being, you know, the sharp edge of injustice, we feel it. Black and brown folks, we feel that. But just like any blade, it has two sides, right?
Right.
And as they thrust at us, it's the other folks on the outside of the situation, they're getting nicked. So they don't notice it. But when we're gone, guess what? Those nicks are gonna turn into something that's a little more profusive in terms of their outbleeding. And then it's gonna be, in some sense, a little too late. And that's what we're trying to prevent.
Right.
By raising awareness around these particular issues. And if people don't do anything, they're saying it's okay. They're saying it's okay.
Yeah, we can't wait until to act upon it, till it you can't wait. The community cannot wait to act upon something if you know, because they'll be like, oh well, it doesn't affect me. But you don't. But you have to take the necessary steps. You know what I'm saying? Talking to your children. You know, making sure you know when they're approached and when they're stopped by law enforcement, how to conduct themselves, and make sure that they're mindful of the situation. You know, but yeah, it cannot die. You know. And I'm gonna do my best to keep his name alive and make sure, you know, that everyone will always remember this.
Absolutely.
Because this is a for show tragedy.
Absolutely.
You know.
And with that, how could people get involved or get engaged or get in contact with you? You know, like through maybe an email address. I know you don't want to probably put your personal information out there because you know we don't want people to. There's so many different people out there. But how can folks get in contact so if they want to get involved or they want to help, they may have an idea, they may have resources, they may have a solution to some things to to solve some kind of issue, whether it's providing, you know, bullhorns for, you know, a rally or a platform or resources or whatever. How do people get in contact with you? And so we can start to develop and move, you know, this issue forward.
Well, I could be contacted at marvwalker527@gmail.com.
Okay, marvwalker527@gmail.com. So folks can get in contact with you. They can support what's going on around this situation, and they can look deeper into this. I remember last time Malik's mother, Contessa, his brother, your son, little Marv, and those guys, they said there was an actual online or not a website, but I think it was a Facebook page. Support Malik Williams Facebook page or something like that. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. Well, they were saying something to that aspect, but I just wanted a place where people can kind of land, where they want to show up and show support. I think that's important because there's some people who will see this and be like, I want to do something, but how do I do it? Where do I start? You know.
Right.
So I guess with your Gmail account, folks can get in contact with you through your email. You Marv, you said Marv Walker. What was it?
527.
MarvWalker527@gmail.com.
Absolutely.
Make sure they can get in contact with you. They can also get in contact with me through this particular platform, through this particular aspect, so we can relay whatever needs to be relayed to you, so we can move things forward, because this is something that we can't sit back and just continue to allow to take place in our society, man. Thank you, bro, for showing up. You know, discussing something that I know that you don't even want to be in space of one of this. No parent wants to talk about that. No parent wants to be in that situation. And I know just probably, you know, going through your day and then knowing that you have to, you know, pick up your shoes and your pants and your shirt, put them on to get in your car to come do this. I mean, you know, like I'm just thinking about the steps, the measurements you have to take just to come to do this. Like, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah,
you know?
It's tough, bro. It's just reliving it every time. Every time you got to tell the story, you're reliving it. You're reliving that night that you got that phone call, you know, and everything that came along with it up to present day, every time, you know, but it's necessary. You know, this is a part of the fight for my son and his honor, you know.
And I appreciate that and I respect that, you know, and I just want to acknowledge that, because I know it's a difficult task to take on, and to see that you're still doing that, man. It says a lot and it shows a lot. And I respect that. I got nothing but love for you, bro. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to make sure that we do our part to get the support out there, you know? So is there any closing words that you have to anyone out there, to our viewing audience?
So no one to have to ever go through this situation again. Talk to your loved ones, talk to your nieces and nephews, talk to your sons, your daughters, and really instill in their mind what's the possibilities when you engage with law enforcement. You know, the do's and the don'ts and the wills and the won'ts. And, you know, just and continue to love on them. You know, let your kids know that you love them.
Thank you, bro. We appreciate you. We also appreciate you as well, you know, to our viewing audience. You guys have been, you know, very, I would say, committed to this process, you know, dedicated to this particular platform here with Good Game Alert. Like we said, we're always going to bring you real, raw, relevant content, information. Stay in tune, stay engaged, you know, so we can continue to keep providing this information. You know, shout out to my producer, Young O, and everyone else who do their part to bring this platform to you. And once again, most importantly, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back at you next Thursday. This has been another episode of Good Game Alert. Peace.